Hello, everyone. Welcome to Williams Lyceum. I'm your host, Hembar. No, Liam, aka Hembar. And I just want to give myself a pat on the back, actually, at the start of this update. As um, I finished, I still probably need to edit it some, but I finished like the first complete rough draft of a short story that I had started a couple weeks ago. It's called Dole's Knife as of right now. And also, I am pretty decently far along in the draft of another story, which I do have a name for it. I don't have it memorized. Let me look at it for you. This one is a lot more work. It's also a lot shorter though. So it's only, as of right now, it's probably only about 1,100 words. And I'm writing it in a very archaic style. My idea was originally to go with early modern English, but it's really turned more into Middle English. And I try to make it largely understandable. I love puzzles and I love language puzzles. Okay, just there's tiny references to things I put in any story I write that honestly no one's probably ever going to get because no one's ever going to study my stuff like it's Tolkien's or whatever. Um, and I'm not nearly as good, so it's fine. All right, but it's just I put stuff in there and it's so fun. It's very fun for me to do that, right? Because I get it, right? In a sense, I understand this very obscure, this very deep cut type of thing, right? But you know, only certain people are going to get it as well. So um, I love doing that. But anyways, it yeah, it's written in a very interesting style, to say the least. I use the yolks and I use long S's and I'm using thorns as well. I'll probably take those out actually when I submit them because those are just most places literally can't print those, or there's a fear that they probably couldn't print them. So they're just interesting letters that are not normally on a keyboard. Honestly, you could probably get away with a thorn though if you like, because that is in the Icelandic keyboard. But I digress. So, anyways, I finished those. So the name of the title right now is Romance of a Toward Fantasy, Sans Insipid and Explicit. Uh, so, which is of course a romance of a future fantasy or fancy, without insipid or explicit. So essentially, I'm just saying it's a fragment, which it's supposed to imitate a medieval manuscript, right? So it doesn't actually start in a certain way, right? And doesn't end technically. So, anyways. I don't know. It's fun. But I should get to the actual books I read this week. I finished 4 books. I didn't gather them actually to make sure I have them. Let's see. I read some more in the Prose Edda from the second part of it. So Skald Skarpamal, particularly the Sigurd and Volsung story stuff. It's interesting to see slight differences here between it and the Saga of the Volsungs, which I did finish. I enjoyed this a lot. It is interesting that you'll get some stuff. This is a good story, actually, and if you read the Nibelungenlied, that's another version of it, pretty much, but that's the German tradition of it, and this is the Norse tradition of it. You actually see certain things. This legend is actually rather old, and you'll see certain things, like in Beowulf, you have Siegmund, which is Sigmund, right, and you have and he's the dragon slayer in Beowulf. It's Sigurd in this, the Legend of the Volsungs. The Volsungs itself, so almost certainly the older edition, the older version of it actually is something you'd see in Beowulf, which is older. The manuscript's not that much older, maybe 200 years older, but traditionally, the tradition of the story itself is probably considerably older than you finally get it written down here. This is definitely from a literary tradition. Beowulf is much more oral. So you have stuff like Sigurd being the dragon slayer in the older sources, or Beowulf at least, which is almost certainly the older sources, and then Sigurd coming later. And you have Siegfried, right? And the names do not actually mean the same thing, right? And so but they're the same character essentially. Also stuff like the Volsungs. It's because you don't have this, because people don't understand what the Volsung is, right? In Old Norse, and this earlier Old Norse, the ung or ing, did not denote familial things, essentially, right? And so now it does, right? So Saga of the Volsungs, but there's a guy in here named Volsung. Okay, that's not a name. It doesn't make any sense, right? You could see something actually in Old English, you'll have Walsing, right? It's the same thing as Volsung, or would it be Volsung in a earlier dialects or whatever. And but then you have a character that's the waltzing implies there's a waltz, right? That there's a person named Waltz. Well, Volsung doesn't necessarily hear it because there's a character named Volsung, and then this descendants are called the Volsungs, which doesn't really make any sense. His name probably should be Volsi, which probably means horse penis. And it's probably related to some fertility thing that is actually going on because his father cannot conceive him, is having trouble with it. So definitely something going on there. But that's the fun thing about reading these old things, as far as language wise and just story wise, is deducing it, figuring out the bits and pieces. Right, there's a lot here that's implied, more so in Beowulf, I'd say, that the audience would just be expected to know that we just don't. Now it's like when someone makes a reference to some like classic thing, right? So be it Roman or Greek, and they just kind of expect you to know it, right? It's the same thing here. Speaking of my writing, I put much more Germanic stuff in there in my writing than I do classic stuff. And that's because that's what I study, not because I'm some white nationalist, which there are plenty of those weirdos. I also finished Goethe's Faust Part 2. Finally, just finished Faust, I guess. Goethe's Faust. I read part 1 a few years ago. I actually enjoyed part 1 much more. It's a little shorter than this, if I'm remembering correctly. And this is a lot more mythic. It has some good stuff, and it's very poetic at times, and it works rather well. Just overall, the story is not as fun. This is also less of a tragedy, interestingly enough. In fact, the prologue, I believe, in Faust Part 1 says it's not a tragedy, essentially, but it ends in a tragedy. Part 1 does, right? So in some sense, you should put this together, and then it doesn't end in a tragedy. But at the same time, the author kind of viewed them as separate works anyway. So glad to have it under my belt, though. There's a fun little nod to the Gothic writers that were popular at the time Goethe was writing this, and I enjoyed that little nod. He's making fun of them, but anyways, I also finished Crown of Stars by Kate Elliott, and that was a fine finale. I don't have a ton to say right now. I'll have more thoughts on the whole series later, whenever I review that. But I enjoyed it. I'm glad to have it done with, to be honest. And now I need to finish some other epic fantasy series I'm in, particularly Malazan, Book of the Fallen. I've been on I just have book 9 and 10, and I've been there for like a little over a year now, I think. So, also I finished The Virgin and the Ice by Alice Peters. I love this series. It's so good. I mean, like, there's always a point in the book where it's just like, okay, I know where this is going now. But just such a lovely, like, I love following Codvel as a main character. He has a medieval sense. It's very peaceful. I mean, like, there's a lot of bad stuff happening, but in a lot of ways, they're very cozy. So enjoyed it a lot. I'm also reading, still reading Dragon Tales, which I don't have with me right now. It's over there. Also, another book's over there I'm reading. Dragon Tales, I'm enjoying it. Actually, I'm more than halfway through now. I read 5 stories and there's 10, but the first 5 are longer than the last 5, so I'm more than halfway through. Some interesting stuff. I'll have thoughts on that when I'm done with it. I haven't read any more on Dealing with Dragons yet. I started reading Overlords of Maxis instead, which again I have over there, and not over there, over there. But that is by Jack Vance. I don't think it's been reprinted anywhere. I think so. Overlords of Maxis is what it's originally called in '51 when it came out in a magazine, and I think it might have gotten reprinted in another magazine. I think in the '60s, and I think it had a different name then. But as far as like in a book, it's never been printed. So just got to read the magazine, which I think you can find online actually, but still, it's not like a famous book by Vance. It is one of his earlier books. It does seem, it is very reminiscent of a lot of his stuff that I've read. I think one of the strengths of Vance, besides his, like, well, Leoness and in The Dying Earth are just fantastic, but in a lot of ways. But one strength of Vance that's very typical of Vance is just his casual world building. He'll just like casually like write a sentence, and he'll have like an insane amount of depth in one sentence and world building or sense of lore in a sense that most authors can't do, right, with much more space to write, right? So he's really good at that. I am enjoying Overlords of Maxis. It's about a boy or a young man, kind of trying to save his family who just got sold into slavery, pretty much. So it is sci-fi. I've also started Baudolino by Umberto Eco, my third Eco book. This one probably will be my favorite, and then The Name of the Rose after it. It has such a good start. It was hilarious. I actually laughed out loud a couple times, which it's been a minute since I've done that with a book. So very, very good. There's this scene with a palimpsest at the very beginning that's just awesome. And it's just fun. It's kind of picaresque. Reminds me some of Simplicius Simplicissimus, which is a great novel. I loved when I read that a few years ago. But yeah, Battolino. It's a 12th century medieval guy. He's Italian, and just his weird adventures and like looking for the kingdom of Prester John, and he's being adopted by Frederick Barbarossa and stuff like that. So, um, anyways, and I have just random dates like coming to mind now because Frederick Barbarossa lost a particular fight against the Lombardic League. Like I think it was yesterday or the day before. Um, and then today is the death of Joan of Arc, and yesterday was the fall of Constantinople and Ascension. Um, anyways, I'm just okay. Anyways, and then also I'm about halfway through the Roaring Trumpet by Fletcher Pratt in El Sprague de Camp. I'm really enjoying it actually, but not like loving it by any means. It's just kind of still. It's not as good as say like El Sprague de Camp's Lest Darkness Fall. But it's not bad. It kind of like tries to scientize, uh, analyze like this fantasy thing. But the reason I wanted to read it now is because I haven't read any of these yet, but also because it's very reminiscent of Snorri's Edda, first part, Gylfaginning, the stories of Thor, and I knew that going into it. Ton Shippey mentioned it in a lecture I listened to years ago. But so yeah, I'm enjoying that actually. It is in the Incomplete Enchanter, which has the first two novellas, but I'm not reading it as a book. I'm reading the novellas as novellas since I had no problem with that. So I think there are five written by Pratt and DeCamp. Um, so the Misadventures of Harold Shea or whatever they're called. So I am enjoying it. Besides that, I don't really have much else I'm reading right now. So just I wrote that one story, got really far into this other one, and yeah, some good stuff I think. So I'm enjoying my reading at least. We shall see how the rest of this goes. I am proud of myself as well because I finally got actually I got my lecture up my other channel, my Alfred Homily Project channel, when I wanted to, right? I normally have the reading come out Sunday and then the lecture come out Tuesday, or that's when I want. But the last two times, so in March and April, I didn't. The lecture came much after the reading, but now I need to get the June reading is early in June, and so I am really pressed for time actually on that. So, and I have to make a presentation for class. Also this weekend, my weekend is Monday, Tuesday, right? And so hopefully that goes okay. Wish me luck. It's gonna be a lot of work. So maybe I can relax a little bit after that until I have to write like an essay or something. Anyways, thanks for watching. Link from Lyceum. What have you been reading? Let me know.